Before we go any further, just want to thank all the people over on Patreon, because without their help, none of this upgraded content that you'd be seeing would be possible. Over on the Patreon, you get exclusive sneak peeks at upcoming videos. You also get access to the Patreon only Discord server. Coming up soon, I'm going to be working on talking about other anime that I can't talk about here on YouTube, like say ReZero, Konosuba, and etc. I'm also going to start posting the scripts for video essays, and every 3 months we do an anime and manga haul. We also are going to open up the Patreon only Discord server to YouTube members at the $2 price tier, which also means that members will be seeing their name here alongside the patron. But with that being said, let's get back into today's video. Yo, what's going on, everybody? It's your boy Naruto Explain here, bringing you guys another review for Boruto Naruto Next Generations episode 279. And now that episode 279 is done in the books, we got a lot to talk about in this one, because not only do we have Boruto versus that fugitive from the Hidden Mist village, but we also have confirmation about Kisuru being the outer member who Boruto is going to end up fighting in the next episode. We also got more shenanigans from the outer members. Apparently, they've got some outer members who are at least skilled enough to catch Mitsuki off guard. The next episode looks like we're going to get a real knockdown, drag him out brawl going on. So with that being said, let's back things up and let's get into the recap portion of the review. So the episode opens up where you have Bata, the girl from the Hidden Cloud Village, who is talking to Boruto, and she's breaking the news to him that, like, yo, this Kisuru Gon Kabuki kid, that kid that you're trusting so much because he's from the same village as you, that guy is a fraud. He talked about the village that he grew up in. I grew up in that same village myself. I know for a fact that the terrain that he's describing, he's wrong. And what I like about this is that essentially we're learning more about Bata without actually having Bata have flashbacks kind of give all this information. She's letting Boruto know just through experience. She could be lying. However, she gains nothing in this situation from actually lying and showing that earpiece, because at the end of the day, Boruto could have looked at her and said, well, you're the one with the earpiece, why should I actually listen to you? Well, the thing about this is that she gives enough detail down to the actual direction where that hot spring is that everything she's saying actually lines up. And I like that right there, because it just goes back to the whole theme of Naruto, which is that a ninja has to learn to see through deception. And you see just how well, not only does she know her home area, but also how she was able to hide her intent, because she was able to steal that earpiece and that communication device from Kisuru without Kisuru even realizing it. And that's more like that ninja element stuff that you like to see. Now, while Sarada and Kawaki are chasing after Mitsuki, we have a scene where Boruto ends up going into the experiment room with Bata, and we find out that Ouga's been waiting on them the whole time to start the next experiment. So it looks like they've been in there for a few minutes, and Ouga's starting to speed this stuff up. So I'm wondering if Ouga's maybe speeding this stuff up just because there might be a situation where he knows what's going on in the outside world, that the walls are kind of closing in, if you will, because based off the information we have from Sarada, when Sarada said it's been so many days since Boruto's been missing, there was more time between the different experiments. So he's in a situation where he's speeding things up. Now, this next game that they're having to play is actually kind of cruel. So basically there are 8 people, and there are cards assigned from number 1 all the way to number 8, and you basically need to clear 7 points in order to survive. And if you got the cards 7 and 8, you're fine. That just means that you need to make it to the end checkpoint on your own and you can survive. However, everyone else, they have to try and get a combination of the various different cards that they need. As long as your cards total up to 7, you're going to be fine. So Boruto starts off with the number 6, so Boruto doesn't need too much more. And there's actually a clever line in there. It wasn't suggested by Boruto, it was actually suggested by Shamu, where Boruto is told just turn the card upside down and that number 6 is a 9. And that was creative. However, Boruto made a good point. Do you really think that's going to work? And the reason why is, like, if that checkpoint station at the end did not have number 9 programmed into it, you're kind of screwed. So while that's going on, you have Bata, and she's meeting with that guy with the curly hair who's pretending to be this rich guy. Bata has the number 3, that guy has the number 2, and the two of them end up getting into a fight once Bata realizes that what's inside of that suitcase is actually a picture of his family in some type of container. Well, that container actually had a drug in it. And we learned that basically the guy's family was being held hostage, and what he was planning on doing was using that empty briefcase to try and bluff his way into releasing his family, and push come to shove, he was going to use the drug as a way to try and get his family back. And basically when Bata's saying like, I'm not doing this for charity, it's one of those times where it's like she had great character development and then she kind of backslid a little bit. And you can tell, like when he was talking about the family thing, you can tell she for a moment felt sorry for him, but at the same time her distaste for rich people, it was really coming through in that moment right there. And so I like how you see the flaws in her character, and for a moment I'm going, okay, wait a second, we're getting way too much development with her. And Kisuru's already said like, yo, this girl stole my earpiece. Well, somebody ends up attacking the guy with the curly hair first, and he ends up dropping dead, and Bata gets killed off screen. And the way that all the camera angles are kind of cutting it, kind of for a second tries to make you think that the girl that's got that 1010 design, Yatsume, it kind of tries to make you think that she's the one that did it. And then there's another misdirect later on where the Roku guy, the guy from the Hidden Mist Village who's wanted, the fugitive basically, it tries to make you think that he's the bad guy. So Boruto, Yatsumi, that monk that's going through forgiveness, and Shamo, they all end up meeting together. And Boruto, you start seeing some of the seeds being planted for the stuff in the code arc, because Boruto is coming to the realization like, hey, I can take care of myself, but I'm gonna need to sacrifice myself in order to ensure the rest of these guys have survived. And Boruto has it down in his head that it's either going to be Roku or it's going to be Kisuru, who are the ones that are working with Ouga, and he doesn't want to believe either one. But it's one of those things where Boruto's gathering information, he's updating his stance. So you see some of the maturity, but most importantly, you see the selflessness starting to develop. You can really see how this arc is being used as a way to try and set up manga Boruto coming into the anime. So I thought that that was nice to see that little tidbit there. Now, while all this is going on, while Boruto is engaging in battle with Roku, you have a situation where Mitsuki has been jammed up and he's covered in all these ceiling tags, and Sarada says, hey, we need to go ahead and just wait for the Hokage to give us backup. We don't need to move any forward. And when I saw the ceiling tags at first, I thought they were, explosive tags. I was like, shoot, does Mitsuki know the body modification jutsu? He does, but he's sealed up. Maybe that seals his chakra. And then I was like, well, what about the hydrification jutsu? And I was like, well, that wouldn't work because his chakra sealed. I was going through a list of jutsu trying to think of what he could use besides the escape jutsu. And the thing on it is like when Kawaki rushes forward and Kawaki gets covered in those ceiling tags, and you see Kawaki using fire release, that lets you know right there, like if those were ceiling tags, they weren't used to seal off chakra. It was a bluff the entire time. It had to have been a bluff because Kawaki was able to set himself on fire in order to burn away the tags, which means that he could use his chakra, which means that Mitsuki could use his chakra. But it's one of those things where you see the difference between the two. You see how Mitsuki is looking at it and he's like, okay, these are ceiling tags. I don't want to potentially use any of my chakra and something else gets triggered. Mitsuki was doing the right thing by waiting for backup, but you see more of that recklessness with Kawaki because we're seeing some of that stuff for manga Kawaki come in because he's like, I'm not doing this the ninja way. I'm not going to wait for backup. I'm just going to go ahead and see what happens. So you can see some of the seeds there being planted, but essentially Mitsuki gets freed and he reveals that it was a group of shinobi who they ended up fighting. And based off of the next episode preview, you can tell Mitsuki at least did some damage to some of the people that jumped him and covered them in those ceiling tags because some of those masks are broken. But essentially Sarada reveals that Konoha has been looking for the outers because they're trying to find a way to try and track down code. And as I talked about in the spoilers for the next few episodes, Sauron, one of the guys that's real cool with the Cloud Ninja podcast, kind of pointed out something to me, man. It was like, yo, like this is something that is later on in the manga. You jumped ahead a little bit, which is that essentially the car outer members don't get caught until we get closer to the big battle that's taking place in that arc. I don't want to go into spoilers because we're literally right around the corner from it, but I jumped the gun on that bit. So the anime is tying together how the car outer members are rounded up. It was something we were told, but we never actually saw it take place on the manga, and so we're actually seeing it take place on screen here. Now, moving things forward a little bit, when you have Boruto and he's fighting, of course Shamo ends up getting captured, and so when Boruto's engaging in battle, you see how Boruto's fighting against Roku, but it's a situation where you can tell that Boruto's pissed off because he discovers the dead bodies of Bata, and he discovers the dead body of that phony rich guy, and he comes to a conclusion that like Roku did it because he's got their cards. And we learned after the fight that Roku had found the dead bodies already and just took the cards because duh, it's a survival game. And Roku comes to a conclusion of like, hey, if I just kill everybody in here, the game has to end. And that in itself is almost a naive way of thinking, because Ouga doesn't strike me as the type to say, okay, I have no more test subjects. You might just have to go through with the last test yourself. And depending on what that test is, you may or may not be able to survive because you need other participants. So it's a double-edged sword what Roku was proposing. Now, when Boruto's fighting against them, you know, they're clashing kunai and etc. And you can tell there's some restraint going on with Boruto, but you see some of the creativity when Boruto's fighting. Like when he uses the thunderclap arrow, you know he's not using full power. First and foremost, Boruto's not using karma. He's just fighting in base. You can tell he's going with restraint because Boruto's not trying to kill the guy. He's just trying to stun him. And what ends up happening is when Boruto starts getting the upper hand, that's when that monk starts jumping in trying to help him. The monk, you can tell he's more of a power fighter. He's trying to land those big heavy knockout blows, and because of the way that he's fighting and because he's not as fast as what you would expect, he's just more of a brute, which makes sense just based off of his build. He ends up getting one of those tentacles shoved into his neck, and so now he's under the control of Roku. And Roku, you know, for a moment, it's like, hey, you need to stop fighting your urges. You need to give into your primal nature. You need to try and survive. Boruto ends up using Talk no Jutsu on the monk. The monk ends up taking a couple of slashes to the back because that monk is protecting Boruto, and Boruto uses the opportunity to hit him with a Rasengan, and the Rasengan leaves the guy out. And what I like about the brief fight that we did see, and it lasted for a while, it wasn't like the whole episode, like the fight went on for maybe about 5 or 6 minutes. The fight itself wasn't bad, but what I like is that we got an opportunity to see Boruto use more of his arsenal. So we saw him use the thunderclap arrow. We saw Boruto wait for the right opportunity to use a Vanish and Rasengan, and once again you see how that jutsu, it catches everybody off guard and they don't know what hit them, but you don't see Boruto spamming it because Vanish and Rasengan should always be a last option. It should be something used in the situation like what Boruto has, where it looks like he threw chakra at you but the chakra disappeared, so you think that okay, it doesn't have enough juice to it, but it hits you as a sucker punch. So I thought it was cool to actually see Boruto use more of the arsenal. Now when he finds out that essentially Roku didn't kill Bata and the curly head dude like how everybody thought, Boruto tells everyone, hey, you guys have enough cards, including Roku. Boruto takes pity on them, and he tells them all to go to the check-in station themselves, and Boruto's gonna wait there for Kisuru because Kisuru has the number 7. So right there, it looks like this is gonna be the battle between Boruto and Kisuru in the next episode. And based off the next episode preview, you can really tell that Boruto's like, hey, I don't want you to be the bad guy, but it looks like you are. You can tell Boruto's kind of conflicted by this. It's one of those times where you as the audience know like you've got the information, you just need to act on it, but Boruto still wants to give that benefit of the doubt. And that's one thing that you can see growth, but it's also a little annoying because you know like, dude, all the signs are there. So I gotta say, overall this was a cool episode. There was a little bit of action in it, enough to kind of wet the tongue. It looks like the next episode you're gonna have Team 7 going up against the outer members. You're gonna have Sarada, Mitsuki, and Kawaki. They're gonna be fighting outers. You're gonna have Boruto fighting the outer inside the maze. Looks like next episode is going to be more of an action-packed episode. If it's balanced like this one, I mean, I'll be cool with it as well, but it looks like there's going to be way more action than it was in this one. So my episode question to you guys is, how do you guys think Boruto handled himself in this? Do you think he showed leadership qualities? Was Boruto being a little bit too naive? While you think that over, click here to watch this Kryptonian Saiyan video, or click here to watch this Naruto Explain video.